This is the Truth Seeker 333. Today I want to talk about noise sensitivity and autistic spectrum. And I found that this is the case for myself, that I can only handle a certain duration of loud noises, or certain noises, or a certain number of sounds or stimuli surrounding me. I'm not capable, I don't feel that I'm capable of processing everything that comes at me if there's too many things going on. And so when things get that way, I tend to pull back, slow down, and take one thing at a time. So this is another reason I suspect that I am on the autistic spectrum. And it's not just any one characteristic, but it is when you look at yourself as a, whole individual, how many characteristics of what we call autistic spectrum can you relate with? Because certainly a lot of these characteristics that are talked about are a lot of people who would consider themselves normal would relate and say, oh, I experienced that too. I can't stand loud noises, or I don't like to be around a lot of people, or go to places like Disneyland and be surrounded by all this activity. So it's not just any one particular characteristic, but it is a combination of a lot of characteristics that have been identified in individuals who are viewed as being on the autistic spectrum. So, but in reality, I think, all of us experience that spectrum in either small ways or larger ways, because of the infinite variety in all of us that makes us each a unique individual. Nobody else in the world is like me. Nobody else in the world is like you. Now, certain types of individuals are more inclined toward autistic behaviors. But not all people that experience autistic characteristics would even think of themselves as being on the autistic spectrum or being autistic. Why? Because they're able to fit into society. They're able to blend in a way that society accepts them. The majority of what we call normal society would accept individuals because they socially interact well, they relate well, and they hold themselves in a way that is considered normal. Physically hold themselves. So if you're clumsy, like I was talking about in my last video, if you're clumsy, you don't hold your stature quite right. You don't move your arms or your hands quite right. Perhaps you don't tilt your head in the normal manner. Then you're going to be identified as standing out, a square peg, so to speak, as the terminology goes. So that brings up another question is, obviously these are things that are being given new labels in this 21st century, but autism and autistic spectrum have been around ever since society was a concept, or ever since humans were in existence. There have been people who are more autistic or less, or I should say more inclined toward hyper social activities on the opposite side. So what we have is, see, right now there's a lot of traffic converging, so it's very hard for me to talk and drive at the same time. So I'm just being safe here, which I'm a very slow driver. I do not take chances. I do not take risks because I know my limitations. And if I need to take a break and rest, I will pull over and take a break. If I feel that, if I do not feel safe and I do not feel that I have control over my coordination or whatever, then I will pull over, or I'll get off the freeway and take side streets home. Because for me, I need to feel secure when I'm driving. So whenever I see a lot of erratic activity on the roads, I may slow down even more. And in case you're wondering why the traffic is so slow on the freeway at times, it's probably because of individuals like myself who are trying to get onto an exit, or just safely make a lane change that would probably wouldn't take as long for somebody else who had a higher reaction time. It has a heavier pedal on the gas, a heavier foot on the gas pedal. Whereas myself, I'm always driving at, the speed limit or a little bit under, because if I go over that, then I don't feel in a prolonged sense of, like going fast, I don't feel that it's safe, that I'm going to be safe driving. So because I don't want to be worried about all of the new variables that are coming upon me as I'm driving along, and trying to look at my left, look at my right, look in the mirror. I want to have a good 500 feet in front of me free and clear, and maybe a good 50 feet adjacent to my left and to my right, and I actually feel safer in stop and go traffic, because you're just like going really slow. than I do in traffic that's like bumper to bumper going really fast. If I get into traffic like that and somebody's blinking their lights at me, then I feel much more comfortable pulling over into the slower lane than speeding up. And I don't think twice about it anymore. I don't get all upset about somebody blinking their lights at me or anything, or honking their horn. You know, like some days, there are days where I'm so worn out, like mentally, that on my drive I may have 2 or 3 people speed by me and honk at me. And that's sort of my cue to be like, oh, you know, like, okay, get over into the slow lane, you know. And so I get into the slow lane, and then if I'm going the speed limit, I'm in the slow lane. If anybody wants to honk at me and blink their lights, they can do it all they want. I'm not going to think twice about it. But, you know, I'm not going to go any faster when I'm in that kind of a state of mind, you know. So anyway, you know, this whole thing about noise sensitivity, you know, going to like a concert, a music concert, is like very taxing on me. Like, I'll take my earplugs now, you know, and like as soon as the music begins to be a little too loud for me and really taxing on my my overall energy level, I'll put my earplugs in, and I can enjoy the concert much better with my earplugs in, even though I'm not catching all those high frequencies. You know, it's the high frequencies that are really taxing me, you know. So the earplugs allow me to, you know, sit there and enjoy the concert with whoever I'm with, my wife, my friends, or whatever. And then it allows me to like reserve my energies for like later on, if we go out to eat or go somewhere, you know, to hang out or whatever. But if I'm like sitting there just like, oh, I can't wait to get home, you know, even though I'm enjoying the music, I have the ability to just like sit there and just take it, you know, just like, I may just look like nothing's going on, you know, just blank face, just like watching it, you know. But inside, I'm just like, oh my gosh, I can't wait to get home. I cannot wait to seclude myself and isolate myself so that I can just recuperate, you know. And it's not like that always. You know, I'm not like always just so taxed from listening to music, because music is a wonderful thing. And a lot of times some musics will like relax and energize you, but depending on where I'm at, you know, if I've had a long day, you know, or if I'm on a road trip or I'm traveling, that's always the worst time for me. It's like road trips, traveling, you know, Disneyland. These are all like person who's on the autistic spectrum. It's like when everything goes kaput, you know, it's like something is going to happen. You know, you're going to get tired, you're going to trip, you're going to bump into things, you're going to drop food, you're gonna drop glass, you're gonna, you know, like lose things and turn the wrong direction and get lost, and you know, all those things happen to people on the autistic spectrum when they're out of their element, when they're like out of their routine and they're like dealing with a whole bunch of new variables, and they don't know which variables to put a priority on, and so therefore everything gets a priority until you can learn how to like compartmentalize those things and like ignore outside stimuli that you don't need to be worried about. I think that's the problem. It's like, once you're in your routine, you know what you're in your routine is needed to be focused on. It's like, when I grew up on a busy street, so a lot of cars going by all the time, sirens and stuff like that going by all the time. But growing up on that street, you learn how to like just endure it and like filter out those things and like not be worried about certain noises and things, and like, and that's the thing with like autism or being on the autistic spectrum, is every time you encounter a new stimuli, it's a danger, it's a warning, it's like something that you have to be alert of. And when you go on like a vacation, or you go on something like a trip to like Knott's Berry Farm or some other amusement park, and you're getting all this stimulus, then you feel like you need to pay attention to everything, and watch for dangers, and that can get very exhausting. But I drive the same way to work every day. I drive the same way every home, and then like I get to know that routine, and so it's not as taxing on me, as new activities. So that's why I like to stay in my routines, and I like to stay, because every time I go outside of that routine, boom, more energy, more focus, more exhaustion, more chances to make mistakes, to mess things up, and so that's kind of how I look at it. And do other people experience these things who are not on the autistic spectrum? Yeah, I believe so. But then the question becomes really, are they really, quote unquote normal, or are those people also experiencing that because they are experiencing that part of the autistic spectrum, but they just don't consider themselves to be on the autistic spectrum, and the rest of their friends and family don't consider them to be on the autistic spectrum because they are gifted in other areas, like maybe socially or physically, athletic or whatever, but just in that one particular area of the spectrum, they might experience more autistic behaviors, that we're all like a multi-dimensional person, not just autistic, not just normal. We're all an infinite number of variety of things, but some of us are just a little bit more inclined to the autistic spectrum in what psychology has identified as key characteristics of those who are on the autistic spectrum, or what I think we should say is more, or they have more characteristics of the autistic spectrum than the normal spectrum or the hyper social spectrum. Anyway, these are my thoughts, and this is what I'm looking into and studying more. So God bless you all, and I look forward to my next video. Okay, bye.